So yo guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Bit of an interesting one for you today. We're at Hampsley Bike Park in the northeast of England. We're on the e-bike. And today we're going to be testing suspension. So I have a coil shock and we've got an air shock. And we're going to do back-to-back runs on a few different tracks up here. And we're going to see which is best. So just give a bit of context as to what I want to do in this video. I want to do 3 runs on the coil shock and then 3 runs on the air shock, and then talk through how each shock feels, how it performs, how it rides, what the pros and cons are each one. See if I can give anybody else any help and guidance as to how these two feel. This is the Super Deluxe Select Plus Rock Shock, and this is the shock that came on the bike originally. And we've also got the DVO shock on here with a progressive 425 to 500 pound spring. So we're gonna see what that's like. I'm gonna stick with doing the first few runs on the Jade shock, the coil shock first, because it's on the bike, it's easier. And then we'll switch this out and we'll do 3 runs down the same tracks and we'll see how it goes. Amanda's on a downhill bike.
Nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I just feel nervous. Just sort of like plop off everything to start with, I think.
Okay, so the first run on the coil shock. Oh God. Oh. I've not actually been here for like 2 years, so no idea what to expect. Is it going to be icy? Who knows?
I was expecting you to send it a bit more than that.
Right. What was that? I'm having a bike down.
Making a video between testing coil and air shocks on these things.
Yes. How's that running?
Good.
It's the best e-bike money can get, to be fair. Orange, obviously. Orange bikes. Orange.
Flying.
Yeah. Okay,
So that was the first run. I'm going to treat that as like a sighting lap because I don't think it's fair to count that as my first lap on the coil shock. That's a sighting lap. Kind of know where I'm going for the first trail. I'm going to go back up and do it again. Well, I bottomed the shock out then. Oh man. Getting a bit more comfortable on the track now. Felt a little bit more comfortable because I knew the track a bit more. Towards the top of that, I went off a bigger drop and the shock did bottom out. Kind of knew that would be the case before I tried the shock because it's a little bit on the light side of things. Like, this shock is perfect for my normal bike, feels really comfortable, but I think on an e-bike I could do the slightly heavier spring just to absorb some of those bigger hits, because obviously when the bike is flying through the air on an e-bike it takes a bigger impact, right? I guess that's kind of where I'm thinking the air shock might be better for tunability, but I guess we'll see when we put that on. Yo guys, just jumping in real quick. If you're enjoying this video and you're enjoying the point of view footage, make sure you check out the link in the description below, because the guys over at Nartec have put together a special 10% discount for all the viewers on our channel to grab one of the mounts. So this is like a real small, tiny little helmet mount that attaches to the front of any full face helmet with just basically 2 cable ties. Real small, real sleek, like doesn't look like you've got anything massive on your helmet. This literally gives you the best angle for point of view mountain biking. Links in the description, go check it out and we'll jump back into the video. This one's called Mind the Gap. The jumps on it. Be a good test for the suspension. Come on. Fucking hell. That couldn't have been any tighter. Holy shit, I shit myself. Need to go faster. Oh my god. Holy hell. Wow. You need to pull up quite hard on that. Right, more speed is needed. Wow, I actually shit myself then. I thought I was going fast enough, but I have to go even faster this time and pull even harder. There's no lip on the jump, you see. Oh my god. Pump the jump before it, yeah, and then just pull. Yeah. Because it hasn't really got a lip on the takeoff. No. And it's just rely on just yanking the thing. Right, okay. Get it. I'll just wait to see if I hear a noise. Oh! Oh my god! Alright, I'll probably do that again. That was okay, but I've not done that one before, so I went like...
Yeah, you went like that way. But it's stepped down, isn't it? You don't have a fucking clue till you leave the landing. Take off.
I think half the issue is this rear shock is a bit too soft. I don't know, it felt like I squirmed up the takeoff then. Try and get the second one a bit better this time. I'm getting more and more comfortable on the e-bike now. Okay, so they were some of the new big jumps at Hampstead Descend Bike Park. They're fairly big. The coil shock then, I think it was a little bit too soft for those jumps. Like on the first run, I felt like my tyres were, or my bike was squatting too much at the takeoff because it was a bit too soft. Second run was a bit better, but could do with a little bit of a harder, more progressive spring, I think. But other than that, like so far on the technical trails we've ridden, the coil shock feels like it plants itself in the ground, it sits there, it squats a little bit more, so I found it's helping with traction, and obviously because of the weight of the e-bike it's sticking to the floor more. But again, even on some of the jumps it still feels manoeuvrable in the air. So I'm going to go and do another run now. I'm going to do pinball B, and then I think we're going to switch the shock out and we're going to go and give the air shock a go. That's the same drop I bottomed out on before. Quite a lot of traction over there. This pinball B, NPS. Oh my god. Did I just see someone's phone? Oh, somebody's dropped their mobile. Oh, I should have been up high there. Was that a drop? Must be. Oh, am I crossing over tracks here? Felt like I was like at one with the bike. Sometimes I ride bikes and feel that you're just an absolute passenger, and that could be for a number of reasons, like wrong size bike, the trail, suspension setup, could be anything. I quite like having a softer, slightly slower bike setup for this, like for suspension on the e-bike. Seems to suit me better. Do you know what's even cooler? I've done 5 laps now, I think, 5 or 6, and I've used 1 bar of battery so far, which is about 20%, so not bad going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and stick the air shock on and we're going to go back to the first track we rode, DH1. I feel that's quite a good variety of everything, of jumps, drops, technical stuff, so I think that's a good test for both shocks. Okay, so air shock is now on, so we'll jump on this now and we're going to go and do a couple of runs and see if we can see how it feels basically compared to the coil shock. First lap on the air shock. Whoa. I do feel I've got a little bit more support in the corner straight away, whereas the coil shock did feel it was squatting a little bit, so That's interesting. Big drop. Bottomed out a little bit. See the chattery stuff. Better than I thought it was going to be. Couple little jumps. Could have jumped that. Oh, bloody hell. Maybe I'll get this line right one day. It's like my test run line. Whoa. Oh, I've got a bit of a different line there. Oh yeah. Whoa. Slid a little bit. Okay, so that was an interesting lap. First run in this little test on the air shock. The air shock actually held up in the chattery stuff and in the berms a lot better than the coil shock did. But I think that could be down to the fact that I've got a slightly light spring on the coil. It was definitely better than I thought it was going to be comparing the two together. So we go back up to the top, we're going to test the climbing and then we're going to test the jumping. So I've got the shock now in its like lockout mode. I'm bouncing on the shock now and it isn't as locked out as the DVA coil. I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage or a pro or a con. If you're climbing up stuff that's fairly mellow like this, personally I would prefer to have a stiffer shock, so like as locked out as possible, like a hardtail. If you're doing technical e-bike climbs, then I'd definitely want to have a little bit more give. Maybe that's one plus, but it's locked out now, but it's not all the way locked out. Can't really notice it too much. So I can definitely feel the back of the bike squatting down a little bit on the climbs. But again, that could be fixable with a little bit more air pressure in the rear shock. But then obviously you would compromise small bump. Oh, there's Amanda. Let's try some jumps on the air shock. Whoa! Had miles on that then. Oh. Definitely air shock gave more pop on the jumps than the coil spring did. Let's try this one. Wow, different line. Having so much fun on the e-bike at the minute. Woo! Again, the air shock is helping me with a little bit of confidence because it's just holding me up a little bit more in all the features on this track. Quick summary on what I thought of both shocks, both pros and cons, because obviously they're two different tools for two different styles of riding. Depending on what you want out of your bike, it's probably going to be different to, say, myself. Coil shock, for me, I went into this test with a personal preference leaning towards a coil shock. That's just what I've known and loved for ever since I started riding, really. So I tried to put that to the back of my mind when I was doing this test because I wanted it to be like a level-headed comparison. So the pros of the coil shock. First of all, it felt a lot more planted on the chattery stuff. So whether that was rocks or roots, the bike just felt a little bit more level-headed. I felt like I got a little bit more feeling through the shock than I did compared to the air shock. The coil shock sat more into its travel and I just felt like a little bit more comfortable at the higher speed stuff. A couple of drawbacks though on the Coil shock, as you probably saw in the video. Jumps were not its strong point, mainly because the spring was a little bit too light. So when I was like pushing into takeoffs and things like that, especially on those couple of bigger jumps, the shock was going through a lot of its travel straight away. That was sending me funny off takeoffs.
Oh my God.
Which was a bit annoying, but that wasn't necessarily the Coil shock itself. That was the fact that I had a too light a spring on it. So this is a progressive spring, 425 to 500 pound spring. If I was to do this test again, or to optimally set up my e-bike, which I'm going to in the future, I'd probably run a heavier spring, which probably would be more like a 475 to 550 pound spring. I think that would be worth testing. Another thing as well is adjustability on these things. So I can't just put some more air pressure in like I could with an air shock. I have to go and buy another spring or another set of springs to test which I prefer. If you've ridden a Coil and an air shock, you'll know how both feel. I really think it's hard to get a Coil feel out of an air shock, even how good this thing is. But so that was my mini review on the Jade Coil shock, and now we'll move on to the Super Deluxe air shock. Now as soon as I changed this over, there was definitely a big difference in terms of how the shock handled and felt. The air shock held me up better in corners straight away. Like, you could feel the bike wasn't squatting down too much in the travel. It was sat quite upright as well, so it felt like I could push more into the corners, and it just gave me a little bit more confidence, and also felt safer, I guess you could say, which again goes with how it felt on jumps as well. So on the bigger jumps, the air shock, because it didn't sink into its travel as much as the Coil shock did on the jumps, it felt like I had more control going up the lip and obviously in the air as well, which was interesting. The only thing I would really say on this is that there was always a trade-off. I guess there's always a trade-off in both shocks actually, because obviously you want that sweet spot of the bike sitting up in its travel, but you want the sensitivity off the top of the travel, which is going to help you with the small chattery bumps, the grip in, say, loose terrain and stuff like that. Obviously the more air pressure you put in the shock, you're going to lose that sensitivity off the top of the shock, but it's obviously going to hold you up higher in its travel. So it is always a trade-off with setting up suspension, and that's what I found with this, especially running a little bit higher pressure in the shock. Like, it wasn't that great on chattery stuff. Compared to the Coil shock, I really felt the Coil shock was better for me personally. And obviously you don't have to bring loads of springs around when you like with a Coil shock. You can just bring this and a shock pump and just put a bit more air in or take a bit more air out, like make real fine adjustments without much hassle. But I don't really think you can get the Coil sensitivity feel in a shock, no matter how good this technology gets, because the air in the can is obviously held in there with pressure and like an airtight seal, which causes friction. And friction and airtight stuff is always going to have like drag and things like that. So that's one pro and a con, I guess, against the air shock. And then climbing for both shocks. This shock is absolutely unbelievable. This isn't like a plug for DVO, but when you lock this out in its firm position, the thing doesn't move whatsoever. So climbing is really, really good, especially on the mellow stuff. Obviously, if you're doing more technical climbs, you'd want to open it up a little bit so you've got a little bit more traction on the roots, rocks, and things like that. This only has a 2-position lockout, which isn't essentially a drawback comparing the two shocks, but this air shock did squat a little bit more than I'd like in the video for the climb I was going up. So definitely prefer the Coil on the climb, but there might be better Coils, there might be better air shocks out there that have a stiffer lockout. They're pretty much the same when it comes to climbing. Like, I didn't really notice too much difference. So I hope you enjoyed the shock comparison, and I hope it helped you get some clarity on like which you should go for if you're looking at changing from a Coil to an air, or an air to a Coil on an e-bike. And don't forget as well, there's a link in the description to go grab a 10% discount on this NAR mount here, so it fits any full face helmet and literally gives the best point of view angle for mountain biking, in my opinion. And it doesn't even look like it's like a massive accessory for helmet. It looks real sleek, real nice in there, real solid, and this is where you're going to get the best point of view angles from in mountain biking, in my opinion. So yeah, link in the description if you want to go and check that out. If you have any questions as well on shocks or anything like that, or anything we've covered in this video, pop them in the comments below and we'll get back to you. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys. See you in a bit.